So, Ilona Garlick from Parkinson's UK, I'd love to welcome you today to the first in our series of Feel Good, Do Good Work podcasts. Ilona, thank you so much, first of all, for participating as an interviewee in our book, which has just come out. That's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Annette, and thanks for having me here today as well.
Oh, no problem. And I also just wanted to just give you a congratulations, actually, because I think since we spoke, you've actually changed roles and had a promotion. If you want to just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so when we spoke, I was Head of Internal Communications and Engagement at Parkinson's UK. And at the start of this year, I took on a little bit more responsibility. So I still look after that team, but I'm also responsible for our learning and development function and also our product improvement and delivery teams as well. So it's quite a neat and interesting bringing together of those different expertise, in the sense that it's enabling us to look much more actually at our culture and our ways of working across the charity. So for those of you who don't know about Parkinson's, it's a progressive neurological condition. It's something that can affect anybody at any age, and there are a whole range of different symptoms that people experience. And so really my role and the role of those teams coming together is making sure that our colleagues and our volunteers can be the best they can be, so that we can do more to beat Parkinson's together and to move faster towards a cure. So it's an interesting time actually for us. We're expecting prevalence of Parkinson's to go up by a fifth by 2030. So lots of interesting initiatives that we're working on as a charity at the moment, and bringing those teams together is definitely helping us to enable our people in different and new ways, building on our previous successes and learnings as well.
Thank you. So I know when we spoke and I was interviewing you for the book, we were talking about purpose, which is such a big thing, I think, particularly at the moment with the pandemic. Something else that who would have known when we spoke a year ago that we would be in this position now. And, you know, purpose is one of those great things, I think, that gives focus, particularly when you've got a sense of what your purpose is. And I know when we were talking before, there was a very strong desire within Parkinson's UK to make sure that all staff were connected to the front line, in terms of understanding exactly what it meant for those individuals who are living with Parkinson's to do that, and to help right across the board. To what extent would you say during the pandemic the purpose and linking all staff to that volunteering effort has played a really key part?
It's been incredibly important, and actually I think it's come into its own, in essence, as you say. I would reflect that we've had different challenges in bringing that purpose to life for some colleagues during the pandemic period. So we rewind back to the start of March. Some of our colleagues who are very much on the front line, so our local advisors, our regional fundraisers, who actually spend most of their time out and about in their local communities, supporting people, working with people, connecting people up, raising funds, they overnight essentially lost that. And so for the first time, our whole workforce, whether they had a job that was more sort of computer based or a job that was more out and about, were in a similar position. And that position was one where we were further away in terms of day-to-day interactions with those people who have Parkinson's. And so what we did quite quickly when lockdown happened was to really refocus and redouble our efforts around connections and around morale and that sense of belonging and togetherness. So we increased the frequency of our all colleague link ups as one example. So we used to do those monthly. We started to do them weekly, and we really reduced down the types of content and themes that we were covering on them, and they became really simple. They became probably more interactive than they'd been before. We started to get sort of Parkinson's healthcare workers. So we got some brilliant Parkinson's physios. They joined us at the start of those link ups. So we were doing exercises, hundreds of us on a Zoom call doing exercises together when you could only go out once a day. So we did that. We also brought members of the community onto those calls much more regularly than we'd done before. So people who are connected with our charity because they get support from us, or because they fundraise for us, or because members of their family are connected. So we got those on, and we essentially, we were very lucky to hear from them and to get their perspective on the pandemic and how they were dealing with it, how they were managing it, and they were brilliant because they gave us insight into what was working for them, that the charity was doing through the website, through our helpline, for example, and also suggestions on what we could do differently. So focusing in on that cause, thinking about the insights from the community, getting our stories really, really present, and being open and honest with each other, and connecting our colleagues every week through that forum and through others became really, really important. Just kind of doubling down our focus, and thinking about what people with Parkinson's needed from us right there and right now. And we all had roles that we could play in that. We had our integrated campaign, which was all about fundraising. We raised around 1.2 million through that. We had opportunities for colleagues to support that, to promote it, to champion it. Those in the charity sector and even those beyond will remember the 2.5 challenge. So we had colleagues shaving their heads, we had colleagues doing different runs, different cycles, all sorts of things. And our core channels for colleagues and for volunteers became all about those things, all about stories and experiences and sharing, so that we were uniting around the thing we needed to focus on most at that time for people with Parkinson's. So I think in summary, absolutely purpose was really important. A repositioning of how we talked about that and what we focused on was what we looked at in the first phases of lockdown.
Fantastic. I do remember you telling me about some of the volunteers that sometimes involved on the recruitment panels, and one of them was you were telling me about last year, was talking about what kind of characterized the work ethic at Parkinson's UK, and just listening to what you were saying there about the fundraising, that he talked about commitment, determination, energy and drive to get it done, to get us where we need to be. And it's that real sense of working together towards the same goal, the same goals, with that shared passion to get things done. And I think that
absolutely
really well with what you were just talking about there.
Yes, definitely. And that strength of spirit and that strength of community definitely came into its own.
Absolutely. Well, that's very clear on that. One of the things we were talking about before, though, as part of the book discussion that we had, was specifically about well-being, and of course, that was really about well-being amongst your colleagues and the volunteers, as opposed to the purpose of the charity. So to what extent has that been amplified in the light of the pandemic? Because I know one of the measures that you were looking at bringing in this year was the wellbeing time off. So how far did you get with that?
Yeah, so in a way, I'm incredibly glad that we started to refocus ourselves towards more of an emphasis on well-being before this all happened. It gave us a really solid foundation from which to build. So when we last spoke, we were on the cusp of doing a wellbeing initiative for January 2020, right. So start of this year. And as part of that, one of the things that we agreed to do as a charity was to offer all colleagues essentially a half-day wellbeing day, which varied ever so slightly depending on contract type and that sort of thing. So it was fair and equitable across everybody in terms of proportion of time that we got. That was run, so that was successful. We had about 78, so just shy of 80% of colleagues taking that up and using it and utilising it. And it was positively received. We ran our staff pulse survey actually in March, so just after that. And there were a number of open-ended comments and responses that referenced it and referred to it. And actually it sort of led to an appetite for more things. So when the lockdown happened, we very much focused on a couple of areas across the piece. So for us, it was about morale, it was about connections, and it was about productivity. And those three spheres essentially were the focus for me and my teams during that time. The morale piece and the connections piece did link very much into the well-being. We approached it in a range of different ways and focused initially very much on the immediate needs. And in those weekly calls that I mentioned, we were asking people, what do you need now? You know, these are some ideas of what we think could be helpful, that might be useful to connect you up or to provide some more context of what the charity's doing around our fundraising campaign, or suggestions on things that you can do. But do these suit you, and do these work for you? So we did introduce a couple of different channels in response to that, which focused on well-being as a topic in their first instance. One of those was something that we call learning loops. So we've got tons, as every organisation does, we've got tons of amazing expertise and knowledge and experience in our people. And so learning loops are basically a weekly thing, and they're about an hour normally on Zoom, and they're an interactive session that may be run by a member of staff, maybe by a volunteer, sometimes by an external, and they focus on a particular theme with some quite tangible actions to take away and give a go, and so on. And the first month of those that we introduced in the spring was all about well-being and resilience. So we had colleagues sharing their experiences of mental health. We had an external member of our community come on and talk about resilience and some top tips around that. So we did a lot in that capacity, in that channel, to focus in on that. We found the metrics that came out of that. So we've done sort of mini check-ins all the way through the pandemic, like lots of organisations have done. The feedback on that was very positive. Sort of, 80-90% agree on certain metrics around people finding them helpful to support them with their well-being, and also to support them as we've gone forward with skills and knowledge that they can apply to their roles and beyond as well. So that's been great. We also introduced tea breaks across the charity, so opportunities basically for people just to come together and to share. Again, at times they've been focused around well-being. They've also done sort of fun and quirky things like Behind the Keyhole and Antiques Roadshow, and have helped us to keep those connections in a time when you lose the water cooler moments or you lose the away days during the pandemic. And then we've also established a well-being hub, and our wellbeing hub is our most popular site on our current intranet. We're looking at our collaboration tools at the moment, but that's been really, really popular, and we're really well received, and is consistently one of our most visited sites on a weekly basis. Even just yesterday with World Suicide Prevention Day and other charities recognising that, we did a showcase again, reminding people of the resources on Mind, pulling people towards our wellbeing hub, and so on. In terms of the wellbeing days, we have actually extended those. So we restarted them in September right up to December. So in kind of 6 weekly cycles, our colleagues have each got half a wellbeing day to take, to use however they want to use it for themselves. I think, like lots of other organisations, we found some benefits from and opportunities that have come through lockdown, and also some things we're still working through. So that sense of Zoom fatigue, we're looking at lots of different interventions and new habits across the charity that support people to step away from the laptop day to day in their work, and also looking at ways like the half-day wellbeing leave to encourage people to take time for themselves, recognising the different intensities and different ways of working that we're all adopting at the moment, in that new normal, as people are calling it. Yes, so that's how we've taken the wellbeing forward.
So, I mean, just picking up on that, taking time for yourselves, would you say there has been much emphasis on encouraging colleagues to focus on their work-life balance? And if so, then how have you done that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the bits of feedback we had about 3 months into lockdown through one of our pulse, I say pulse surveys, essentially they were much more light touch than that, kind of polls and insights that we shared at regular stages through our all colleague link ups and other ways. One of the things we heard back was a request for more flexibility, and also a sense of people finding it difficult to turn off, because you wake up in the morning, you kind of go straight to your laptop, and then you can find yourself sat there still at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock if you're not careful. So that work-life balance piece we've profiled. There's something about role modeling. So actually our executive leadership team being really open across all our channels, our social channels, our all colleague link ups, our weekly newsletters, about their experiences. We've also reignited some of our social media groups. So one example that we reignited quite early on was our parents group, because obviously homeschooling during lockdown was really tricksy. and each of us had different experiences that we could share and different resources and things like that. So getting those stories, that role modeling from the top around the work-life balance has been really important. There's also been some sort of focus, which we're in the middle of at the moment, around setting new habits and new norms. So we're looking, and I'm working with different directorates to reflect the fact that we've got different job families and different ways of doing things, but to think about things like kind of library time, or afternoons where you don't go on Zoom and you agree as a team that maybe you're going to have some head down time to just do something creative on post-its and with Sharpies, or again, flexible and variable depending on different roles and different specialisms and work type, but working with directorates to really focus on that balance in terms of work delivery. And then we're looking at things across the charity as well. So we're about to start a wondrous wellbeing walks series, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that will start in October. And there's going to be different challenges for people to get involved in on a weekly basis during October. So again, early stages, and we're scoping it, but things like around conkers, around the change of seasons. So basically blocking out sort of an hour here and there across the whole month for people to do these walks, to do these different challenges, to share selfies and things of themselves as well. So I think a lot of that balance piece actually, Annette, has been about understanding that we found ourselves in new situations, and we're having to create new rituals and new habits and new permissions sometimes to do things differently. And I found myself, like, I didn't realize how much my morning commute helped my creativity. It sparked me, it stimulated me in different ways. So there's definitely something about us understanding those differences and working out ways to create a new set of habits, a new set of norms to enable us to still achieve all those things that we enjoyed doing and made us so successful in the first place.
And is it the case that largely people are still largely working from home, or are there many people back into the office?
Yeah, so we have reopened our offices, obviously in a COVID safe way, like everybody has. Because of size and proportions and things, there's a limit on numbers that can go back. We're being very respectful, as I know a lot of organisations are, around personal preference in that mix too. And of course, this whole lockdown period, we've had to get used to a new working pattern and way of doing things, but also we've all been juggling personal things too. So we're doing it in a very tailored way. And again, this plays into, I think when we spoke last time, we talked about that importance of the team and line managers and the role that they play in terms of defining your culture and your style and how you operate as an organisation. So they're playing a really phenomenal role in all of this as well, and in making sure that colleagues are supported based on their personal needs and their personal circumstances, and balancing that with our overall delivery for people with Parkinson's too. Yeah. So yes, we are reopened, but a small proportion of colleagues back in the office. For our local groups and our volunteers, we've created some of the teams have worked on a fantastic pack of guidance for restarting face-to-face activity, but we're certainly ready to pick that up and press play on that whenever local groups feel comfortable to restart their activities.
Yes, because I was just reflecting really, one of the reasons I asked that was just thinking about the initiative you were talking about happening in October with, encouraging people to go out and take walks and take selfies and things. We're half circle, I suppose, aren't we, since this has started, where it started at a time of the year where it can be a bit cold and a bit grim, and trying to encourage people to go out and take that bit of exercise. Well, of course, we're coming up to the autumn winter months now, aren't we? And that's possibly a bit more of a challenge to encourage people to go out and about, and particularly if there is a resurgence of the virus. But
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And that's where the balance, what we have seen, which has been wonderful, is things moving online in a way perhaps we didn't think they ever would. So we've got initiatives across the country in different places, and a number of those have moved online in really creative and engaging ways. And that's been, so at the moment we're looking at our Get Involved tool on the website, for example, and historically that was peppered with lots of face-to-face activities and places to go and people to meet and things to do. And now we're in the process of cleansing it and actually just adding the online things that people can do, which will bring different communities together in a way we perhaps haven't seen before. So it's like you say, isn't it? It's that mix of opportunity and also challenge
Yes,
that comes in the mix, and we're definitely learning as we go.
So just finally, what would you say, reflecting on this period and thinking about engagement and where you are with well-being and just the sort of changes you've had to make in this current climate, what are some of the things, the surprising things potentially, that you would keep when things get closer to being normal again? So accepting that possibly they may never return to being exactly as they were, and that may be a good thing. But what are the kinds of things you think you might keep out of this?
Yeah. So I think the things we would keep, definitely, the first one that comes to mind is we, like many others, had a very diverse and mixed workforce. So we had some who were very out and about and not really coming into offices very regularly, and then others who would sit at their office desk sort of 5 days a week and do some volunteering here and go to our brain bank research centre, you know, every now and again. But actually this whole process has been a very equalizing one, and it's been quite something to see all of us in the same context, in the same position, working from a laptop day in, day out. And actually I think what we have done, which is very positive, is to think about the ways in which we run meetings, the ways in which we collaborate, and how we get everybody's perspective and build that sense of belonging when everybody's remote. And I don't think we'll ever go back to a place where we would have a meeting in an office where you'd have 4 people in a room and someone dialing in. I think what we've agreed as an organisation is that we would always dial in, and we're all therefore on an equal basis, and kind of the norms that sit around meetings and some of the top tips that we set up for opening rounds and all that jazz are very much suited to that remote working environment, which I think is very freeing and enabling for people. There's lots of talk in the press, isn't there, of people, you know, moving to different places and the freedom that will bring for their own personal lives. So I think that balance is really important, and we'll keep that. The second bit I think we'll definitely keep is giving things a go. So we had to accelerate giving some things a go with the lockdown, and some of them have worked and some of them haven't. One of the things that we've actually been looking at most recently is kind of like our workforce, and how do we all share our experiences better and our knowledge better. So we've set up coach and cuppers, for example, and that's like a coaching little technique. People are paired up and they support each other through a challenge or something that they're working through. We'll definitely keep things like that going because they just cross-pollinate that experience across the piece. We've also got some of our furloughed colleagues who've returned in what we're calling lean-in opportunities, and they're basically in different teams. They've come back to support a different area of the charity to get experience in that for their own personal development, and also so they can come back because some areas, of course, aren't ready to pick up their old activity necessarily in the way it was before the pandemic. So those sorts of test, iterate, give stuff a go, trial it, and share and cross-pollinate more, I think will always make space for that in a way that we did before. But you know yourself, there's always those other priorities, or the business as usual, or you know those things that you've stuck to for a while. So that experimentation and that learning from each other and facilitating that is something we'll definitely keep. So they're the 2 big ones that spring to mind. I'll probably think of loads once we finish. I could have said that too.
Yeah, I love the sound of the coaching cuppers, and it's I think that's a really nice thing in terms of for those that have been furloughed to who are itching to come back. You know, I'm absolutely sure, and just to sort of think that they've actually got something different to look forward to, so that'll aid their long-term development. And I think that's a fantastic initiative. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you ever so much for your time today. I'm sure our listeners will appreciate it. And thanks again for all your help with the book. And yes, I really appreciate your time today. So thank you, Ilona.
Thank you, Annette. It was great to join you, and fantastic to be part of the book as well.
Marvellous.
Hopefully it's the start of many more.
Yes.